Hi, everyone, and welcome to our November webinar. This month we have a real treat. Our subject matter expert is Terry Aberhart. Terry is a successful Canadian farmer who has really embraced precision technology tools and innovation in his operation. During this webinar, Terry is going to walk us through 4 key business areas where he's really found ways to leverage ag software. And then Terry will provide us with some examples of how he's doing this in his own large farm operation. The reason we're excited about this webinar is Terry's willingness to take a deep dive into his own operation and give us some real specifics on the ways that he's using farm software and also the hands-on benefits that he's experiencing on the farm on a daily basis. Before we bring Terry into the conversation, we wanted to let you know that as a token of our appreciation for the time you're spending with us on this webinar, Trimble would like to send you a free gift. These gifts are currently available only to those in North America and are limited to 1 per household. But if you've watched this on-demand webinar during the month of November 2018, we'll be sending you a gift. Please watch for an email to hit your inbox a few hours after watching this for more information. Okay, so as I mentioned off the top, today's subject matter expert is Terry Aberhart. So Aberhart Farms is a progressive dryland grain farming operation located near Langenburg, Saskatchewan, so it's close to the Saskatchewan-Manitoba border. Operating in both provinces, Aberhart Farms produces top quality cereals, pulses, and oil seeds using advanced farm and agronomic practices. From early childhood, Terry has always had a passion for the farm, for agriculture, and for entrepreneurial growth. And as you can see here, you'll see in this webinar, it's a real family operation and everyone is involved. Now I'm going to bring in Terry as he walks us through 4 key ways he's using software to make farm management easier. Over to you, Terry.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for this opportunity, Tracy. I appreciate that. And yeah, I think we're here to learn and talk about how to use software to help manage the data and manage the farms. And one of the things a few years ago, I was asked to speak on a farmer panel about how we're using software and ag data. And so I put together this mind map to try to just understand for myself really all the different things that we're trying to manage on the farm. And when you start laying it out between all the data, the agronomic data, analytical data of soils and tissue tests and crop insurance, human resources, inventory of crops and inputs and all the different things, you just become to realize that there's a huge amount of things that a farmer has to manage on a daily basis. And yeah, a lot of times you look at it, it's quite overwhelming. I think a lot of times farmers feel overwhelmed with the amount of information out there. But the reality is we're all working towards a common goal of trying to be able to manage this data in 1 or 2 different places with software technology. And once you learn to leverage that technology, it can actually make things very simple. And I always like to use the analogy, it's much like your smartphone. I mean, it wasn't much more than 10 years ago, smartphones didn't exist, right? And now we can't probably imagine living without them. And they seem very simple and easy to use. But if you gave somebody a smartphone today, somebody that phone 10 years ago, they probably wouldn't even know how to turn it on, let alone use it, right? So that's the kind of thing that I look at with technology, and especially software. It takes time to kind of learn the systems and to get your team in tune with that, but it really can create a lot of efficiencies and simplicity once you put the time into it.
Mm-hmm. And is it true that you sort of envisioned, long before this was a reality, that, a scenario where you could actually manage your farm from your phone? And how close are you to being there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, actually, at that conference, it was 3 years ago, right before the Farm Progress Show in Champaign, Illinois. And I stood up there and I said, I believe I'll be able to run my farm from my phone in the future, and that's kind of where I see things going. And so at that time, within the Trimble Ag Business Software or AgriData at that time, we were probably 50% there. and now I would say we're probably 80% there. And I can definitely see within a year or two, we can probably be at the point where we're managing work orders and everything from the phone. We use WhatsApp chats and different things like that for communication. So we're very, very close to that right now. So it's really interesting how quickly some of these things can evolve.
Wow, that's exciting. So now we're going to dive into the four key ways. So we're going to look at four business areas that where you're using ag software to make farm management easier. So we're going to talk about worker management, inventory management, tracking and making decisions based on true profitability, and then also sustainability, which is increasingly important to farmers. So can you dive in with managing the team? And just, first explain to us a little bit about, everyone has to work together, obviously, and share data and communication when they're part of a farm operation. So how does that work? What do you see are the key, the key practices and the ways that you're using software to make that really effective?
Yeah, so I think just relating back to the first slide there's a lot of things that you need to manage, not only with your day-to-day team and the operations, just getting the actual work done, but communicating with your banker on inventory and your accountants and advisors and all these different things. So one of the things I like about this slide or image that I found here is just, everyone there is working together to achieve the common goal of moving this guy in the wheelchair kind of thing, right? So I mean, the reality is we need to utilize software and tools and technology and communication to make sure that we're all on the same page. We have the information that we need to get the job done, and it's in a very easy way to use, and we all are using the same information. And so as we move forward with technology, there's so much more information that we have available to us. But if we're not all singing off the same song sheet, so to speak, that can become very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is what we're trying to do. And really, I think the key behind success, and one of the reasons is the first thing is this is really helping us manage our team in a more effective manner. And we can look at a few examples of how we're specifically using Trimble Ag Business software to help simplify and manage our team and our operation.
Sure, let's jump into that. So farm mapping.
For sure. So this is a map of our farm. Our main farm yard is in the middle of the land base, and we're spread out about 40 miles from tip to tip. And as I said, our main yard is right in the middle. And so as farms get larger and more complex and take on more land and managing more crops, and we also have more staff. So one of the first things we do with anybody that joins our team is we get them to load up the Trimble Ag Business software on their phone. We give them the password and the login, and now they have access to the farm app on their phone, and they know every single piece of land that we own, the boundaries, the crops, and all those things. And even for someone like my 17-year-old daughter isn't necessarily actively involved in the farm operation all the time, she doesn't even know where all of our land is. But if I need to tell her to go harrow this field, Johnny's field, or go run a part to the Altman land, she can just bring it up on her phone, type it in, get directions there, and she can find the field without me trying to explain to her that she's got to turn at the second gate post with the gopher hole beside it, 2 miles north of Johnny's place, right?
Yeah.
So and the other thing is, I mean, as much as sometimes the neighbors would maybe like if you pick stones on their field or work their field for them, I mean, even having the field boundaries at night or different things like that, to know that our sprayers aren't going to go out of the boundary or end up on somebody else's field. It seems silly that maybe that's something that's part of the discussion, but the reality is those things happen, especially as you get a larger workforce and a larger team. And so very simply, this is one of the first things all of our staff uses, and it's extremely helpful because you can take somebody. Even we've had people from overseas, South Africa, or wherever it may be, join the team, and don't maybe understand the land location systems that we have here and the road systems, and they can find where they need to go very simply. So that's one of the first things that we see a lot of value with, and just how we work with the team and manage the team with this software.
Okay, great. Let's jump a bit to managing inventory and see if you can sort of describe how, I understand that you're staying on top of grain and inventory data, which is really key. How is that working on your farm?
So it's working very well now, and this is one of the areas where we alluded to earlier, that it takes you have to invest a bit of time and learning into to getting where you want to go. And so I think where people fail sometimes when working with software or technologies is you get this technology or software and you just think you can plug it in or turn it on and everything's going to work seamlessly. And that's just not reality. But we've always managed our inventory fairly well. But a few years ago, we decided, as things got larger and more complex, we wanted to really use the inventory management system within Trimble Ag Business Software. And I wanted to be, like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to be able to manage my farm from my phone. And I want to be able to look on my phone and be able to see what's in every bin, how much is there, what field it came from. And we knew we could get there. It was just a matter of putting the system in place. So it took us about 3 years to get. We started this project about 3 years ago. And so what we're doing is, with the Trimble Ag Business Software, we can export a file that goes into our grain cart scale system on the grain cart. It's called Agramatics. So it uses an API to talk back and forth with Trimble Ag Business Software. So we can automatically load all of our fields, all of our bin locations very easily into this app. And so we don't have to re-enter all of that data. And then as we go through the fields, every single load that is taken off of the grain cart, off of that field, is coded to a truck, it's coded to a bin or a grain elevator or buyer or a contract. And we know the moisture, the time it came off the field, where it went, and all that stuff. And so that information then can be transferred back into Trimble Ag Business Software. And so basically we have inventory management in real time. Then as we start to haul out to the elevator or onto our contracts, those scale tickets come into the office and they're entered in as they come out. And so same thing, the inventory going out, or as grain gets transferred from one bin to another for whatever reason, it's more or less tracked in real time. And we can, from our phones, literally walk out into the bin yard and say, okay, what's in bin 3, and pull this up, and we can see how full it is. We can see the different fields that it's come from, or even on a contract, we can see, if we're hauling onto a contract, how full that contract is, what our average moisture is that we've delivered on that contract, or protein, or whatever it may be. And so the first year we worked with this, there was a few holes in the system and a bit of growing pains. The second year it worked very, very well, probably 80% with a few hiccups. And the third year that we're in it now, we were just talking about this the other day with my admin manager. The system is almost flawless, and it's just we're just doing it, and it's working very well. And so it's one of those things where, yeah, you got to put a bit of time into it, but once you get there, we can't imagine going back to the way we used to manage it, which was still pretty good. But yeah, this has been a really huge thing for us on the grain inventories, and we're tracking our input through the system too. And we haven't quite got that system quite to the level that we've got in the grain inventories, because we wanted to work on that first. But yeah, this has been a really huge one for us.
Wow, that's cool. Um, this now in this next slide, we want to talk a bit about data-driven decisions, which is a term that we use quite a bit. And sometimes I wonder how well understood it is. But on your farm, I understand that you have 220 different productivity zones and in your 60 plus fields. So that's really a lot to manage when making crop input decisions. So can you speak to this graph and just tell us a little bit about how it's helping your team make data-driven decisions?
For sure. So I think one of the key things with data is, and I mean, probably most growers out there don't get very excited when they hear that term, because I think what we've all experienced for the most part is we have unbelievable amounts of data, but we don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And data is great. We've got maps and layers and years of all kinds of information, but the key to getting value out of the data is to put it into formats and systems, reports, graphs, charts, whatever it may be, that aggregate and simplify that data into information that you can quickly make decisions with that you couldn't have before. And so there's a lots of examples how the software can do that for us. This is one example where, yeah, in our farm now, we're farming about 15,000 acres. We've got about 60 fields. They're all zoned in precision management. And we have about 220 zones that we soil test every year.
Wow.
So typically to make a crop input decision prior to having this type of information, you would more or less have to kind of build the crop plan for each field, figure out the calculations and kind of figure out all the numbers before you could make a decision on pre-buying inputs, which is something that typically a lot of growers do because there's usually better deals earlier on and those kind of things. So this is just an example of a certain crop. I think it would be one crop on the farm, but with this system, we have all of our soil tests in the system, and we can compare whatever data layers we want, whether it's nitrogen or basically anything on the soil test or the tissue test. But this is an example here where we're comparing nitrogen levels or nitrate levels in the soil test. And I'm comparing 2000, I think it's 2016 to 2015 in this graph maybe, but either way, I can quickly look at the aggregated data across the whole farm and look and say, hey, how much nitrogen do I have on average across the farm versus last year? And so in this example, I had on average 10 more pounds of nitrogen in the soil across the whole farm, which was about a value of $50,000, but also can quickly help me make a decision is if I want to pre-buy inputs and I'm looking to target similar yields to what I did last year, I know that generally speaking, I need to buy about 10 pounds less of nitrogen across the farm, and I will be within a couple percentage of what I need.
Right.
And so this type of information, I can take 15, 20 minutes, half an hour with a couple clicks of a button and make a decision that's within 5 or 10% of what I think my total needs are with quite a high level of accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before, it might take me a week or two of crunching data and punching numbers to kind of get to the same conclusion.
Yeah. Wow. That kind of that sort of bleeds into this third point, which it kind of all leads into, I guess, which is managing profitability. And I understand that you've had some real success in this area, that by using profitability analysis in the software to see where you were maybe losing money on some acres, and as a result, overall growing your net margins by $25 an acre on average. So, can you tell us a little bit about how that's happening on your farm?
For sure, and this is just one of the ways that we've been able to take the aggregated data and make some really interesting, valuable, and simple decisions on the farm. So now that we have zone management, precision management across the farm. And now that we have yield data across the farm, and we know what inputs we put into each zone, we can generate a profitability map. And we can look at what areas of the field are making more money and what areas aren't. And what we started to realize when we started to look at some of these areas is that there is areas of the field where we are actually, not only are they low producing, but we were actually losing money on them. And so this example here, the image on the right, I guess the way I'm looking at it with the additional red is just shows the poor areas of the field, and that red area was actually negative margin or negative profit margin. And the example on the left is, you know, what we looked at removing that negative area. So we started noticing this, and our first question was, well, maybe this is just a poor year and that's not representative. So what we did in this example and others that we've done like this is we actually went back and we took 5 years of yield data, 5 years of profit margins, and we saw that even over the course of 5 years in multiple different kinds of crops and weather conditions, on average, we were losing $70 an acre in that red area of the field by farming it.
Yeah.
And we looked at the overall productivity of that field was about a $50 positive net margin on average. So then we started looking at, well, what if we just took that poor area out and just didn't farm it, period, right? Because why take a $70 an acre loss? So what we did when we looked at the numbers and crunched the data is, well, not only would we not lose that money, well, then the rest of the productivity of the field actually goes up. And so then on average, we're making $75 an acre on the good land. And in this example, we took 25% of the land base out. So we're doing 75% of the work and increasing the money that we're making, which is not normally typically the way that you would think about things.
Yeah.
But it's the reality. And then what we actually ended up doing in these areas is planting them down to hay, which produces quite well in these areas. And in this case with the renter, we just didn't rent that 40 acres of land that we took out, and she's letting someone custom cut it for hay. But talking to her a few years later, she's actually making more money than she was in rent by selling the hay. So she's happy, we're happy, and it just less work, more money, and it just makes sense from an environmental standpoint too. So it's just kind of a win in every area.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that really leads into the fourth and the last kind of key area that we're going to talk about is managing sustainability. And how do you, how do you really view that as an agronomist and as a farmer? And how does that part of your mission in your farm operation?
Yeah, I think this is really important, and I believe people look at sustainability in a lot of different ways, and this word maybe gets used and abused a little bit at times, but I believe profitability and sustainability are also kind of tied together, because I mean, to me, sustainability means that you're creating something that's better in the future than it was before, and that's our motto. That's kind of our tagline for the farm, is growing our future. And it's about, for me, that's about making things better than they were in the past. And that's not only from a soil and an environmental standpoint, but also a financial and profitability standpoint. Because at the end of the day, if you're not profitable, you're not sustainable. No organization or business or farm can continue into the future if they're not, creating returns and being profitable. So for me, I think as an agronomist and a farmer, this is about using this data to help manage these decisions and understanding where you're going in the future. So things like tracking your phosphate or potassium or your nutrient levels in your soil, maybe you're growing really great crops, but if you're not putting the right inputs back into the ground and you're slowly mining your soil, that's maybe sustainable in the short term, but in the long term, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
You're leaving
Mm-hmm.
the soil in a worse condition for the next generation than it was when you took it on. And so there's things like the last example, which I think example I use a lot because it's such a simple, it's basically just taking poor land out and not farming it. And that concept has been around for a long time, in different forms, in different ways. But I think that the reality is there's lots of areas like that on the farm where there's inefficiencies that we don't realize without having the proper data to analyze it. And we can make our life simpler and easier, have less risk, and do things that are better for the environment, all while generating more profit and being more sustainable. And when you can find things like that, and sometimes they're way simpler than you think, I think that's one of the issues we all run into is sometimes we overcomplicate things, or we think some of the stuff is more technical than it really is, and sometimes at the bottom line it's really simple. So, and that's where having the ability to take all this information and aggregate it into simple reports that you can analyze and make decisions, is really powerful. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what the whole system is for me, is to be able to have a system not only to, you know, manage your team and help have your team have the ability to help you record that data, what's happening on a day-to-day basis, manage the inventory and information that you're dealing with day to day, utilize the data to make better decisions and to be more profitable and sustainable for the current generations and the generations to come, is really what we're using this system and software and technology for, the benefit of our farm and others down the road.
And into the future. Yeah, it's a real example of triple bottom line. So that's great. Thank you so much for taking us through this. There's been some great examples and scenarios from your operation, which is really helpful, and for sharing your passion about farming in this way. I appreciate you taking the time to do that with us today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity to share. I think it's something we are very passionate about what we do on the farm, and agriculture. It's a great industry to be a part of, and I think that, you know, we have the mindset of let's make the pie bigger. Let's grow things for the future, and I think that yeah, I mean, we want to help learn and share, and that's the amazing culture of agriculture, is just there's so much innovation and learning going on all the time. It just makes it a really fun thing to be a part of.
If you have any questions about this topic or about other solutions from Trimble Agriculture, please don't hesitate to reach out to us by email or by phone. The contact information is here on the screen. Also, make sure to come back in December when we'll be launching a new webinar topic, which we will announce in the coming week here on our website, in our newsletters, and also through social media. Thanks again, and see you back here in December.